Hey guys, it's me Simo Orahara, and in this video we will be discussing the Quincies as a race, when exactly they first appeared, and several points I will try to shed light on again, based on the new information revealed in part 3. But before we start guys, I need your reaction. Don't forget to support this video by your likes and comments to increase its reach, so other fans can watch it, and a big thanks to the ones who support Simo, either the memberships of my channel or on Patreon. Thank you guys so much. This topic guys has always intrigued me, and I still see it as one of the most important points of the story, especially since the Quincies as a race are directly connected to the Soul King in Yhwach. And if the question of how they came into existence is fully revealed, we would gain a greater understanding of the relationship between the Soul King and Yhwach, as well as when exactly they both appeared. For example, even though we don't have precise information on how the Hollows were originally formed, we know from Ichibi's statements in the novel that they appeared in the ancient world and became part of the world's Rishi cycle. And later when the world split, some Hollows were born as pure Hollows from the beginning, like Irikura, who was mentioned to have been born along with other Hollows in a pit. Meanwhile, others became Hollows by transforming from human souls overwhelmed by negative emotions such as sorrow and loneliness, losing their hearts, which then formed into the masks that defined them as monsters. And these Hollows guys followed an evolutionary cycle, being either Gideon, Adukas, or Vaster Lord, and some of them would even become a Rancor if they broke their mask and gained Shinigami-like powers. Which comes to the Shinigami, they share a certain similarity with Hollows in their nature. The Shinigami are not really a race in themselves, but rather a title for some kind of powerful souls who have the job of guiding and purifying other souls, both normal ones and even souls like Hollows. However, they are fundamentally souls from the spiritual world. Some of them were originally humans who after dying ended up in Soul Society and joined Serity, like Rukia, who was originally a human. Others were born directly in Soul Society as spiritual beings made of Reishi, such as the nobles, Byakuya, Ishin, Kyoraku, Kichaki, and others. And then we have the Fullbrings, who are human that gained their abilities due to fragments of the Soul King's body, and these fragments were the initial catalyst for their powers. So we can say that Fullbrings as a race only emerged after the three realms were formed, and the novel indicates that they have existed since ancient times, though few knew the truth about the origin of their abilities. And when you look guys at these three groups, the Shinigamis, Hollows, and Fullbrings, you'll notice that each belongs to its own world. Shinigami in Soul Society, Hollows in Wikomondo, and Fullbrings in the human world. And although conflicts existed between these races, they never posed a serious threat to the balance of the realms. We could even exclude the Fullbrings from this equation since they chose to hide in the human world and their powers did not threaten other races. And the major conflict was always between the Shinigami and Hollows, especially as the hunger of Hollows drove them to attack both human souls and Shinigami themselves. However guys, even when Shinigami defeated Hollows, they purified them rather than destroying them completely, preventing any major harm to the balance of the realms. And so the three worlds functioned under a stable system. The Shinigami act as the balancer, guiding and purifying souls through their Zanpakuto. But everything changed with the appearance of the Quincies. The emergence of Quincies completely disrupted the balance of the realms. And this is where the mystery lies. And so we can start guys talking about this mystery. I want to highlight how the conversation between Ichibi and Yhwach echoed something Rukia had already stated back in chapter 46. And in that chapter guys, Rukia explained to Ichigo who the Quincies were. And I believe much of what she said came from Ura Araki since she didn't seem to know about the Quincies herself until she consulted him, and pay close attention to what she said. She explained to Ichigo that the Shinigami had to eliminate the Quincies to prevent the world's destruction, and she described how the Shinigami were previously known as the Balancers, and that the Soul Society was responsible for managing the number of souls between the human world and the Soul Society, including Hollows. And this balance was very important for maintaining the stability of the three worlds. Rukia then added something significant. She said everything was fine until the Quincies appeared. And she didn't specify when exactly they emerged, But when they did, they started eradicating hollows completely. And this meant that when they were destroyed, those souls couldn't return to the cycle of reincarnation, causing an imbalance among the three worlds. And she emphasized that if this continued, the line between life and death would mix, ultimately leading to the collapse of the three worlds. Naruki also mentioned that when the Shinigami first discovered the Quincies, they tried to convince them to stop and leave the purification or the management of hollows to the Shinigamis. But this request was rejected. Naruki added that the number of Quincies doubled, which also increased the extermination of hollows, bringing the world close to destruction. Thus it was decided to eradicate them. Much of what Rukia said reflects that meeting between Ichibi and Yhwach, making it seem like she was recounting the details of what was said during that era 1000 years ago. For example, one of the first points she mentioned was that the Shinigami were called the Balancers, and their duties involved overseeing souls, humans, and even hollows. And she explained that once the existence of the Quincies were discovered, the Shinigami tried to talk with them, asking them to leave the management of hollows to them. And this conversation closely matches the start of the flashback from episode 24. Ichibi began his speech by explaining that, as the balancer of the three worlds, Soul Society, the human world, and Wikomondo, he wanted a peace treaty between the Shinigami and Lectrike, or the Empire of Light, where the Quincies would leave world management to the Shinigami and focus only on their internal affairs, such as expanding their empire. And this statement, guys, reveals a key point. Ichibi talking about a peace treaty implies there had already been conflicts between the Shinigami and the Quincies, likely in the human world. And this conflict was probably due to the Quincies' method of eliminating hollows, which, as we have said, disrupted the balance of the worlds. And that's why I said, guys, that maybe Rocky was talking about the events of 1000 years ago, rather than just 200 years ago, as she was describing the time when the Quincies first emerged. And of course, she may not have known the exact timeline, but the events she described align with the era when that meeting occurred. And another crucial point, guys, Rocky mentioned was that if the Quincies continued to destroy hollows in their way, life and death would overlap. Meanwhile, in the flashback, Yhwach questioned the separation of life and death, implying that originally they coexisted in a single world. That's why I really appreciate how Rocky's explanation was mirrored in the flashback, but from Yhwach's perspective, who saw the merging of life and death not as a disaster, but as a way to eliminate the people's fear of death. And this leads me to believe that the Quincies might have existed due to Yhwach's desire to return the world to its original state. After all, the Quincies are the only beings with powers capable of disrupting the balance of the worlds. But the key question remains, when exactly did the Quincies come into existence? Considering Yhwach is said to be the source of all the Quincies. That's why, guys, I have two possibilities. The first one, that the Quincies originated 1200 years ago, and this matches the flashback where Yhwach was born 200 years before his first war against Immortal, and he was also shown to exist with Soul King in the ancient world, and this could mean that his birth 200 years before the war was actually a rebirth. And personally, guys, I don't think Yhwach founded a family that became the Quincy's race. It's more likely that he transformed a group of humans into Quincy's by sharing his blood through special rituals, creating the first generation of Quincy's, and these Quincy's then interbred and expanded their lineage. And I have go so far for this, and I asked the ChatGPT to estimate how many descendants could result from two people over 200 years, and it calculated around 70,000. So if Yhwach had turned a significant number of people into Quincy's, the population could easily exceed 50,000. And the second theory, guys, is the Quincy's existed before Yhwach. This theory is based on Busby's statement that persons like Hatchfeld had appeared repeatedly for generations but eventually stopped appearing for centuries. And this suggests that the Quincies might have existed long before Yhwach. And if that's the case, how did they originate? My theory is that Yhwach undergoes a life cycle where he ages, reverts to a child and then grows again. He might have appeared in an earlier era and formed the first generation of Quincies, and then returned in the timeline shown with Baz being Hatfield. Or maybe some Quincies have come directly from the Soul King, because now the anime suggested that one of the theories of the true identity of Ryo is that he is a Quincy. So maybe some Quincies have existed before Yhwach and they got their power or their identity from Ryo himself. For all these reasons, guys, I truly hope that Kubo will at least reveal when exactly Yhwach appeared and how the first Quincies were created. This would give us a broader understanding of the Quincy's race, especially since the fourth part will be the final part of this season, which is entirely focused on the Quincies. In the end, guys, what do you think about what I have said? Do you have other theories? Tell me guys your opinions in the comments, and see you guys in my next video.